Transparency International is the international benchmark for how corruption is rated in the country. Guess what? Under their watch, Nigeria dropped. Nigeria dropped.
I was just going to mention to Ms. Adesina that, you know, to some people, perception is their reality. When that court judgment came through that the government should publish the names of those who they recovered looted funds from, the government agreed that that was going to happen. But at the moment, you know, a lot of people are still waiting. And that perhaps puts a question mark about how we're proceeding in this fight against corruption. On the premise, to some people, perception is their reality. But let's move on now because we need to wind down. Let's talk about perhaps job creation and education, if we have time for education. With respect to creating an environment and to create jobs, because I suspect you may tell me that, you know, it's not the business of government to create jobs, even though I see you mention some figures here about creating jobs. Are you satisfied with where we are today about job creation figures for this country at the moment?
Anybody who will be honest with himself would not be satisfied. But then it depends on what did you inherit. You inherited joblessness in millions. I think I read a figure which the president also used to campaign that about 35 million Nigerians were unemployed then, young people, graduates. Now, if you have that kind of figure, will you then be satisfied with what we have now? Obviously, no. Minister of Labor and Employment said about 7 million jobs had been created. He oversees that sector. He should have the true statistics. If you have created 7 million jobs out of an unemployment figure of 35 million in 2015, you know it's still a far cry. It's just like a drop in the ocean. I also had a central bank governor say about another 7 million jobs have been created through the Anchor Borrowers Program. It's good, but this is just like making a tiny dent in the unemployment situation. But like I always say, government is work in progress. This government has identified what the problems are and is working to solve those problems. Anytime the president identifies the 3 focal areas, he says we will secure the country, we will fight corruption, and we will revive the economy with particular emphasis on job creation. And that is what the government is doing.
Because at the moment it will seem that your party is basically relying on intervention programs to create these jobs that people are trained, but outgoing from those trainings, we don't know how much of a capital that you give to them to be able to start up. But that's on the one hand. People are really concerned of real jobs and the kind of environment that you create to allow these jobs to be and to even thrive. Would you say that the APC, for instance, as advised by the leader of the party, that go the way of industrialization because that is the only way that you can begin to engage the people, give them those jobs, and the people don't go hungry? What has your party been able to do along those lines?
I agree with what Chamberlain said earlier, that it is not really the business of government to create jobs, but it's the business of government to create an enabling environment. After that, jobs will then be created. It's the private sector particularly that creates jobs. Government may have what you can call a drop in the ocean, but the one that will make an impact on the country, on society, will be done by the private sector. And government will have to create that enabling environment. Talking of industrialization, you don't industrialize without getting some facts right. Infrastructure particularly, roads, power, transportation, and the like. But then see what Nigeria earned between 1999 and 2015, particularly in 6 years of an inglorious administration, when oil went to as high as $120 per barrel. What did we make of it? Did you see roads? Did you see rail? Did you see power? Did you see anything you didn't see? The money was stolen. So how do you then industrialize in 2 years? How do you expect that that situation will be reversed in 2 years? But this is a government that is determined to make an impact, and Nigerians will see that impact.
Under our administration, the PDP administration, one of the strategy for industrialization that we try to do and that are running now is to come up with the concept of free trade zones. And in almost every part of the country today, you have a lot of thriving free trade zones. You see, industrialization and running of government is policy and intelligence. It's not enough for you to have the guts in the heart and think you know. In education, we knew that what would be reasonable for the North is for us to make Almajiri education. We built those schools, believing that if they go to school, eventually there will be a change in lifestyle. We created universities. These are the kinds of enablers that government does. What they have been doing with themselves is deceiving themselves that they can play with words, and then expecting that Nigerians are going to eat and lap on that. And we have a duty to keep telling Nigerians that that's not how this thing looks. They have to know the realities themselves. How many people have been employed? The last time CBN was going to employ, we found out that it was even shrouded in mystery. They were just employing their cronies. In terms of private sector-led economy, everybody who is a Nigerian knows that under us, there was a thriving and bubbling Nigerian-led private sector in the oil and gas, in media, in telecoms, in music, in Nollywood. All of these things were part of the simulation, including under us. Being an MC became a business because we realized that the traditional businesses was not going to be able to accommodate everybody, and we had to figure out ways to encourage the creative in the areas of our people, ingenuity of our people. And all of the people who are in the system, in the IT sector now, who are doing great things, they all did it under us. There is no new man, or there's no new improvement. There's no new champion. In actual fact, most of the businessmen that are in this country today cannot tell you that they are happier with this government than they were with the previous. Some of them that are even not having anything to do with corruption or not being primary government, because the government understood that minimum interference is the key. Rules must be respected. Policy must, and even if we gave Muhammad Buhari, the president today, 10 years, he can never do as much policy.
We need to wind down on this. Mr. Adesina, could you tell us, because we heard in that report that this book will be at no cost to government. Who's paying for this book?
Donations.
You know that in any administration, you will always have friends of government, those who believe in government. It is somebody who believes in government, who has undertaken to print that book for free. We did the production, gathered the materials, edited, but he printed free. And at the presentation last week, the Progressive Governors Forum now undertook to do further printing so that the books will be in the hands of as many Nigerians as possible. So the books will be printed and handed out free. They will not be sold.
Okay, so quickly before we go, are we going to get a second book when the projects are completed?
Not unlikely, because this is a midterm report. Of course, when the administration is either 3 years or about winding down, there will be another one.
All right, we need to go now, but make it 10 seconds.
There is no free lunch in Freetown. Anybody who says he's printing book for government free is only getting patronage from government via some shady and difficult to opaque system. This is a cashless government that is full of hypocrites, charlatans, and people who don't stand by their words. So
you don't believe that there's a genuine interest in just printing free?
But it says the governors have undertaken...
Absolutely cashless.
Mr. Segun Shomi is a member of the PDP, and Mr. Femi Adesina is the Special Advisor, Media and Publicity to the President. Gentlemen, thank you for talking to us today on the program. We'll be back in a moment. Don't go away.